Okay.
Doug Mayhaw, thanks for joining us on the Illinois Channel. And Doug, one of the things as we are here in December, about a week away, a little bit more than a week left in 2023, one of the big issues is this effort by the governor, the Democrats, and the legislature who they passed a bill regulating so-called assault weapons. And that bill, which they passed in 2023, takes effect on January the 1st of 2024. But I understand that part of the problem is there's still a whole lot of questions involved with this legislation, some of the definitions within the legislation. So why don't you, if you would, you are the president of the Illinois State Bar Rifle Association, I should say, give us an up-to-date of what your understanding is of the issue and why it's causing gun owners in Illinois a lot of consternation at this time.
Well, Terry, there are 170 rifles, shotguns, and pistols specifically named that you are now banned in Illinois. And it's pretty obvious if it's a CZ or something that's banned, that it is banned. But there's so many rifles, shotguns, and pistols that are not named specifically. And are they outlawed because of the accessories that go with them? And there's also a question about the size of shotgun shells. They have these mini shotgun shells. Does that make a normal Remington 870 shotgun, does it make that illegal because it holds these mini shotgun shells? And for every answer, it seems like there's 20 more questions that remain unanswered. There have been JCAR hearings where they didn't accept any permanent rules, which has been both good and bad. And they are having another rule, JCAR ruling, I think January 16th. However, the registration starts January 1st. So we're supposed to register firearms on January 1st, and yet they're still going to be determining rules on January 16th. It makes no sense whatsoever.
Let me ask one question. So we're talking about banning so-called assault weapons, right?
That is correct, yes.
But does the legislation that was passed and signed into law, which takes effect January 1, does it define the term assault weapon?
I have never seen, I don't think I've ever seen a good definition of an assault rifle. The new director of the ATF, when he was asked that specifically what an assault rifle was, he says he couldn't define one. So the person who's the head person in charge of all this, he doesn't even know what an assault rifle is. So how are we supposed to know? And they say they're weapons of war. A Ruger Mini 14, some of those, if they have certain attachments, are considered a weapon of war. That's a very common, it's a wooden stock rifle, and that is illegal if it has certain accessories on it. And the whole thing just doesn't make sense, Terry, from A to Z.
Now, here's another question I have. If I have a gun, and I've had it for years, and it would be the kind of gun that the governor and the legislature would say is an assault weapon.
Okay.
Does that mean I have to throw it away? Does that mean they come and take it away from me? Or if you already have this gun, do you get to have it? Are the pre-existing gun owners' guns, are they grandfathered in?
No. If you register them, then it is grandfathered in. Let's just say you have an AR-15, which is probably the most common rifle in America now. They say there's over 34 million of them. And if you have one of those, they are saying you cannot have them unless you register it. And if you don't want to register it, you have to either sell it or take it out of state. And you can store it out of state, from what we understand, and you are then legal. But otherwise, if you bought one 5 years ago from a gun store, you went through the NICS check and you filled out the proper forms, because you bought something legally, as of January 1st, you are going to be a felon if you don't register it and don't get rid of the gun. So
Let me, okay, so we said that the registry, basically the rules are not finalized. And they're going to have a meeting, as you mentioned, coming up in the middle of January. But as we already said, gun owners are supposed to be registering their guns as of January 1st, which means they're supposed to be registering these guns right now.
that is correct. As of October 1st, they can start registering the guns. And yet, I think it's still less than half of 1% of the FOID card owners have registered a gun. And there are over 2.4 million FOID card owners. And with less than 1%, I think you would have to have over 200,000 people a day registering their guns to get them all done by the deadline. That's assuming that every FOID card owner does have a banned weapon, and not every single one will, but I suspect that it's going to probably be 95% of the people will have a banned weapon.
What kind of penalties are there for people who don't register these guns by January 1?
The first offense, let's just say that you have 3 rifles or 3 weapons that are not legal. The first one is a misdemeanor. If you have a second firearm, that's a felony. If you have a third firearm, that's another felony. If you have 10, that's 9 more felonies. So it's pretty bad. And when you have a felony, you're going to face possible jail time or possible large fines.
And I know in covering the gun issue in the past, people who, the layperson, the person out on the street who hears assault weapons, that sounds like a machine gun, like someone's going to have a machine gun that we see, in World War II movies. But basically, when we talk about these guns, they are not fully automatic, right? In other words, the guns that they are calling an assault weapon do not work where you pull the trigger and it just starts shooting bullets one after another. You have to pull the trigger every time to send one bullet out, right?
Yes. The rifles that we have in Illinois are genuinely not assault rifles because you have to pull the trigger every single time that you want a bullet to come out. Weapons of war or assault rifles, the Army is not going to want a weapon that you have to pull the trigger every single time. They want machine guns that you pull the trigger and it will keep spitting out bullets. And no Army would ever want an AR-15. They want an automatic rifle, not a semi-automatic.
So if I have to pull the trigger every time to send out a bullet, we might have an AR-15, but the fact remains that the AR-15 doesn't operate much differently for the purposes that we're talking about here. The trigger mechanism of sending a bullet out doesn't really operate much differently than a pistol. A pistol, you have to pull the trigger every time you want to shoot it. I think the layperson knows that from watching cowboy movies or gangster movies, right?
Yeah.
But they imagine that an assault weapon, you pull the trigger and 100 bullets go out in a minute. And so to be clear, that's not the case. Fully automatic weapons, which as you say are weapons of war that the Army would use, are they legal in Illinois?
Unless you have what's called a Class C license, no, they are not legal. The average person like you and me cannot own a weapon like that. It's strictly forbidden. So we can have AR-15s, we can have Colt revolvers, anything like that, a pump shotgun, and that's very, very legal. But a true assault weapon, people in Illinois are not allowed to have that.
So when we show people a picture of an AR-15, they go, oh, that's an assault weapon. But if I show them a picture of a shotgun, they go, well, no, that's not an assault weapon. And yet, in both instances, you have to pull the trigger every time you want a projectile to come out of the barrel.
That's 100% correct. If it's a rifle, a pistol, or a shotgun, in Illinois, you have to pull the trigger every single time you would like a bullet to come out of it. There is no such thing as automatic.
So why are they targeting, in your estimation, and why are they targeting AR-15s and other weapons that are like that?
Because they're not getting to the root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem, I think, when there's mass shootings, are mental illness. And they're targeting guns. They don't target automobiles when somebody is a drunk driver. They target the person driving it. It's the same thing when somebody uses a gun illegally. They are, instead of targeting the gun, they ought to target the person, and that is not what they're doing. And I think a lot of this is Pritzker has big designs to be president of the United States. I think that's been heard many, many times. He's using this thing as one of his platforms. I've gotten rid of all the bad guns in Illinois. I can do the same thing nationally. And he and others are pushing President Biden to have national gun confiscations also. So I think this is a big push for him to become president. And he has an awful lot of money. He's worth over $3.2 billion, I believe. And he has also offered, if necessary, to pay for the whole Democratic convention. And if he does that, obviously he will have a big say at the convention. It'll give him more chance to become a candidate to become president. So I think this is all a big scheme.
Well, we have had, as you know, the shooting at the 4th of July shooting where innocent people were shot. I think that was an AR-15 weapon, if I recall right. That was in 4th of July in 2022, as I recall, in the suburbs of Chicago. There have been other shootings. There have been school shootings with pistols frequently. There have been AR-15s, but again, are you alleging that because they don't have any other answer, they're targeting weapons that people think are assault weapons when, as we've already discussed, from a mechanical standpoint, they're all the same. You have to pull the trigger one time for one bullet.
These laws that they're trying to pass and have passed, I think to a large extent, are feel-good measures. It makes somebody feel good. Oh, we're eliminating these guns. Crime is going to decrease. Shootings are going to decrease. I predict that no change is going to happen. When Clinton had the assault rifle ban many years ago, it was in effect for 10 years. There was no difference in shootings after the end of the 10 years. And that was widely, in many, many different cases, they did tests and things on it, and there was no change in shooting, so it didn't do any good. The same thing's going to happen now. Do you think gangbangers are going to listen to this law? Oh, I can't have an assault rifle. I'm going to turn it in. Nothing's going to change for them. So and they're the ones that commit the most crimes. So nothing's going to change, other than us law-abiding gun owners no longer will be able to have guns that we normally use.
What do you hear when you hear from your members when you discuss this? What kind of feedback are you getting from gun owners across the state?
An awful lot of anger. What many are saying, what I have said also, is the only crime I ever committed, I've gotten probably 3, maybe 4 speeding tickets in my whole life. And now, because of guns that I purchased earlier, they are deemed assault rifles. So if I don't register them, I'm going to become a felon. And how wrong is that? And yet they are now have passed a law that not an illegal alien, a person who's not a citizen can become a policeman, and they can actually have the guns that I can no longer have. How wrong is that? That's disgustingly bad.
I was going to ask, what is the Illinois State Rifle Association doing to fight back Is there any steps that you can take to hold this up? Are you suing to block this implementation?
Absolutely. The law, I think, took effect January 10th, and by January 18th, we had filed a lawsuit. And Judge McGlynn in Southern Illinois had put a temporary restraining order on it, and we had for 6 days people were allowed to buy the guns again. Then the state filed to the appeals court. We lost there, and we filed for an en banc hearing, which includes the whole Seventh Circuit. That was denied, and now that allows us to go directly to the U.S. or to the U.S. Supreme Court. And we're in the process of filing the motions to do that right now. So we are trying very, very hard. There have been state cases that have been put on to the Seventh Circuit, and they've even tried for the U.S. Supreme Court. So there's many, many people in state courts and federal courts that are trying to fight this very, very terrible law. And we're quite confident that once the Supreme Court hears it, and we are pretty sure that they will hear it, that we'll eventually get our rights back that we're going to lose January 1st.
So from what I know, and we've kind of alluded to that you have law-abiding citizens who now, with only a fraction of them having registered these guns, are going to be turned into felons because the state is going to say you've now committed a felony, even though you have someone who has always followed the law. As you say, in many instances, the only time they broke the law is a speeding ticket. Some of these people may be police officers, some may be firemen, some may be other people that work with the state. Has there been some discussion then? I would imagine they not only would be charged, but they could lose their jobs as police officers or firemen. There's probably some other laws in the, I'm not a lawyer, you're not a lawyer, but there's probably some condition that if you're a police officer, you can't be a police officer if you're guilty of a felony.
Well, police officers are exempt from this law. So if you're a police officer, you are allowed to keep your guns. If you are active military in Illinois, you are allowed to keep your guns. If you're retired military in Illinois, as I understand it, you are not allowed to keep the guns. Another thing that I have heard from 2 different gun shops or people I have talked to, they have said people have come in to buy a now banned gun, and they tell them you can't have that in Illinois. And they say, why? These people were not even aware that this law is in effect. I think that the state should have and should notify every single FOID card owner in Illinois that this law is in effect. Some people are going to be absolutely blindsided and become felons, not even be aware that this law happened. And Illinois has a registration of every FOID card owner. They definitely can notify them. They notify you when your FOID card is due for renewal, so they can tell you that this law is in effect, and they haven't done it. And I think that is a very, very terrible thing for them not to have done.
On the FOID card, first of all, because a lot of people know nothing about these guns, a lot of people are not gun people. They don't own a gun, they don't follow the issues. They don't even know what a FOID card is. What is a FOID card?
It's a identification card that everybody in Illinois has to have in order to purchase a firearm.
So it's a firearm owner's identification, right? And we pronounce it FOID,
yes.
FOID. You have to get the card so that then you can have the right to have a gun, right?
That is correct, yes.
Now, I think Illinois is one of only 5 states in the nation that have such a rule that you have to have a FOID card to own a gun.
Yeah. I knew there was a couple other states. I didn't realize it was 5, but that very well.
And of course, since the Second Amendment says you have the right to keep and bear arms, the fact that you have to have a FOID card, that by itself has been challenged as being unconstitutional by many who are Second Amendment advocates and say it's in the Constitution that we have the right to keep and bear arms. It's not It's not. It's a right. It's a right like free speech. It's a right like freedom of assembly. So that's another issue and another hoop that Illinois. And one of the problems is that the Illinois State Police issue the FOID cards, and they have not always been doing that very efficiently. What kind of delay do you know are there currently for people applying for FOID cards?
They were terrible delays before, and we have actually sued the state police before for this kind of thing, and they hired more people and got more efficient and got the FOID cards being put out on time again. But for a while, people could wait over a year in some cases for their FOID card. And I think now that they're doing it pretty efficiently. I haven't heard any complaints from any members recently about bad delays on that.
So let me ask you something that we hear when people are interviewed on the news or at public hearings. Someone who's not a gun person, they go, Doug, why the heck would you need an AR-15? Why would you, you're not going to use that for hunting. Why would you want to have an AR-15? What's the answer to that?
I think a good answer is it is a good hunting rifle. People use it for coyotes, and they use it for groundhogs, things like that. It's also a very fun rifle to take to the range and shoot. At the ISRA range, we have called the Tuesday Night League, and most of the people there shoot AR-15s. And there's a big group of people doing that, and this happens all over the state and all over the country. It's the most popular rifle in the probably it's the most popular firearm in the United States today. So it's a very, very common use firearm. It's not a rarely used firearm by any means.
Before we close out, I would also note that we have an open border right now. We know that there are terrorists who have crossed because there have been people who have been stopped on the terrorist watch list. And there's probably any number of people we don't know who have gotten in and haven't been stopped. We have police departments in cities across America that are being defunded. Their budgets are being cut. We know in Chicago they're shorthanded. In New York City, they're shorthanded on their police departments. It's hard to recruit people to come and join. So to put this in context, in 2023, going into 2024 in America, we have an open border. We have police in Chicago where there's been something like 400,000 911 calls that haven't been answered within a 30-minute period of time. So when the people say, you don't need a gun for protection, you can just call the police, we have to add the context of what's happening. Is it fair to say that some people just want an AR-15? They're not hunters, but they want to be able to have something that when we saw the riots in 2021 after George Floyd was died, and we had buildings being set on fire, we have businesses being attacked, isn't it also true that people, they may not want it for hunting, they may want it because they want to be able to protect their family should the riots and mayhem break out in their neighborhoods?
Absolutely. A pistol is a good defensive weapon. A rifle is a better defensive weapon. And AR-15s fit that bill very, very well. I have actually taken defensive courses in pistol and rifle, and I use an AR-15. When I took, it was a 4-day course, and I took that, and the AR-15 proved to be a very, very good weapon for that course.
When we saw the Dirty Harry movie, right? And Dirty Harry says, go ahead and make my day. And the question was, I know what you're thinking, punk. Did he shoot five times or 6? And the question is, Dirty Harry, are you out of ammunition, right? Because did you empty your clip? How many bullets does a AR-15 clip contain? And I know it's going to vary, but how much can you legally have in the state of Illinois?
In the state of Illinois, as of January 1st, will be 10 rounds in an AR-15.
And so you'll have to have another clip, or you have to have another clip that's loaded so you can pop the empty clip out and put in the one that has replenished the ammunition.
That is correct.
That can happen pretty quickly, right?
Yes, if you're if a group of gangbangers come into your door, it's happened where I've seen a video where a policeman emptied his whole gun out and he had to put in another magazine, and if he didn't have that, he would have been deceased.
And putting in another magazine, does that take minutes or seconds?
If you're well trained, it takes seconds.
And if you have a handgun that holds 6 bullets and you run out and the guys are still coming at you and you have to reload, how long does that take?
That won't take minutes, but it's going to take
it's a lot longer to reload a handgun, right?
Absolutely. And if they're coming and attacking you, you're done by the time
you're going to be dead before you can get back in the game.
Yes.
And that, folks, is really what's at stake here. You have people who have never broken the law now going to be charged with felonies, potentially charged with jail time or heavy fines. And so we are making criminals of law-abiding citizens, right? That's the argument, I think, here.
That's exactly it. And again, none of us, we wouldn't have a FOID card if we had a bad record. So there's potentially 2.4 million people who are going to become felons. And again, we've really broken no laws, and yet now criminals are allowed, like in Chicago, they can steal up to $950 and they don't even get a slap on the wrist. And yet we've done nothing, and then we won't be able to have our rights anymore.
And by the way, they don't have their theft. They don't have their $950 theft card punched by the retail establishment. So they can steal $950 on Monday and come back and steal $950 on Tuesday.
Yep.
And they can do it every day of the week, and they're not going to be charged. And they can be running a business selling these goods that they got for free that the stores have had to pay for.
Yeah.
So we're not charging criminals, but we are going to charge law-abiding citizens.
Yep, that's exactly it. And these criminals who are going to these stores, so many Walgreens have closed down, grocery stores have closed down in areas. They can't afford what's going on, and they don't worry about that, the legislators, but they worry about us. And they need to get their head on straight and look at the real problems and solve the real problems, not do imaginary ones like going after people like us.
And before we close out, again, have you talked to the governor? Have you talked to any of the state lawmakers about this and made the points that we've discussed? And if you have, what kind of response do you get?
I have not talked to the governor. I have talked to a couple of state representatives, and they are like-minded like I am, and they were not for this law, and they didn't vote for the law, but the legislator is tilted right now, and they won, unfortunately, and hopefully we will win eventually with the U.S. Supreme Court.
Doug, I'm going to bring your website up again here, isra.org. I presume there's information on your website if people want to get more information, or if they want to get a hold of you or even join your organization. I guess there's some contact information there.
Yes, there is. You can see a lot of the laws that are in effect. There's a way you can donate. There's a way you can join, and you can see stuff about our range. It's a very good, active website, and I think people would enjoy cruising through it and seeing what we can do for them.
All right. Well, Doug, I'm sure, people across the state, this is a statewide issue, people both passionate for and against this bill. I'm sure we'll be following it. We appreciate your time. And we'll do a follow-up as this develops in 2024, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I much enjoyed it.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.